Hey folks, happy St. Patrick's Day. Today we're going to talk about the saint. We're going to talk about the saint, the patron saint of the Irish. Good old St. Patrick. Because, on St. Patrick's Day, everybody's Irish. Actually, in particular, what I want to share with you is I want to share with you a story of redemption in St. Patrick. A story of redemption. Before we get going, I'm going to share one of the stories about St. Patrick that I know. There are many. All right? This is my reflection on my interpretation of one of the many stories about St. Patrick. What I say, it may ring true with you, it may not. You may know different stories than I do. Please feel free to share with us in the comments some of the stories about St. Patrick that you know. Okay, here goes. St. Patrick, the Lord bless us all, was not Irish. St. Patrick was born probably in England. Now, he was a Roman Briton. He probably was not a Christian at birth. His family probably were not Christians, but he was born in England. When he was a young man, probably 15, 16 years old, he was captured by Irish raiders. And those Irish raiders took him back to Ireland as a slave. Now, let's not make any kind of glorification of this. He was a slave. There was nothing romantic about it. They didn't treat their slaves better than others. He was a slave. He did the garbage jobs. He did the jobs that nobody else wanted to do. He did the jobs that made other people sick. He did the jobs that only slaves would be asked to do. He was not treated well. He spent 6 or 7 years in Ireland as a slave. One day he heard a voice, and that voice said, "Soon you'll be free." A little while later he heard the voice again saying, "Go now, there's a ship waiting for you." And so he escaped. He took off. He ran to the shore. He found the ship waiting for him. He argued with the captain for 3 days to take him home. The captain finally relented. They took him back to England. Once he got home, I guess it took like another month for him to find his way back to his family. When he got back there, he decided that he was going to be a Christian priest. He felt the call. His experience with that voice in Ireland and some of the other things in his life convinced him that Christianity was his way forward, and he decided he was going to give his life to God. And so he studied Christian theology. Eventually he went off to Europe, where he studied to be a priest. He was ordained, and he went back to England. That's when the call came. He received an invitation from some bishop who said, "We want you to take the gospel back to the Irish people." Patrick wasn't the first missionary. He was not the first Christian missionary to Ireland. As a matter of fact, there had been several. And those missionaries didn't work out too well. Some of them never came home. Some of them came home terrified, beaten, bruised, broken. The church still wanted to send people to Ireland. And Patrick was the perfect candidate. He was uniquely experienced. He was uniquely educated and trained for this particular job, not because of anything they taught him in seminary, not because of anything that he learned in his schooling, but because of his time there. He knew the people. He knew what they were like. He knew their habits. He knew their behaviors. He knew their traditions. And now I understand what I'm saying is a huge generalization for the Irish people based on Patrick's limited experience in one small corner of the country. But he had more experience than any other missionary they had ever sent before him. One of the things that oppressors often forget is that they are watched incredibly closely by those who they oppress. The people who are oppressed, they watch the oppressors. They watch them because they want to know when they're about to be angry, when they're about to be happy. They want to know when they're about to strike. They want to know when they're about to be generous. It's a matter of safety. People who have experienced these sorts of relationships, they understand that it's really, really important to always be looking at the one who controls you. Always be looking for them. Always be watching them. It's a matter of safety. And this experience of Patrick's, those 6 or 7 years in slavery of Patrick's, it gave him the knowledge that comes when the oppressed watch the oppressor. So he accepted the call. He accepted the call. And I can't imagine what he would have had to go through emotionally to say, okay, yes, I will take the love and the light and the mercy of Jesus Christ that is found in the Gospels. I will take the love of God that is found in Jesus Christ. I will go to Ireland and be an example of Jesus Christ for the Irish people after everything that he had been through. And yet he does it. And he is wildly successful at it. He is adored, adopted. He's taken in. The people there, they embrace him. Now, don't get me wrong. He took a beating or two in his time as a missionary, but for the most part, he was well received. It's why we know of him now. It's why we know of him as the white beard having, green beer drinking, snake chasing, shamrock holding saint that we all know and love. I believe that God takes the worst parts of our lives, the trauma, the drama, the anger, the grief, the sadness, the betrayal, the disappointment. Takes all of it and uses it for what is good. Now, I do not believe God causes bad things to happen in our lives. I'm much more in line with a fellow by the name of Rabbi Harold Kushner along those lines. God doesn't cause it. But God takes it and God redeems it for something good. In Patrick's case, God took those 6 years of torment and slavery and he redeemed it. He allowed Patrick the opportunity to experience the joy of being his missionary in Ireland, of sharing love with those who shared nothing but hate with him, of sharing light into a corner of the world that Patrick found to be incredibly dark. For all the pain that Patrick went through in his time in Ireland, his time in captivity, the Lord gave him, empowered him, encouraged him, equipped him to be the divine messenger to those people, to show them the depth of the love that God has for them. Patrick still had to do a lot of work, I suspect, to allow that to happen. Again, I can only imagine what he would have went through to say yes. The questions, the anxiety, the fear, the stress he would have felt being asked to go back to this place of pain and sorrow. But he did. And because he was willing, all that was before was redeemed. There are many things in our lives that maybe we regret. There are many things in our lives that have happened to us that have caused us suffering. If we're willing, these things can be redeemed for something greater. It's a lot of work. It's not for the faint of heart. It requires us to be bold and courageous. It requires us to trust even though we have no reason to trust, and even though trust is incredibly difficult for some of us. But no matter what came before, I truly believe that all can be redeemed. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord's face be made to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord's countenance be lifted up to you, and may you always know the peace of being in the Lord's presence. And I pray pray that no matter what was, we will embrace what could be. We will give ourselves to the possibilities that are to come. We will say yes when the opportunities come our way. Amen.